What's happening? Woo. We have a nice and intimate group today. That'll be great, actually. Probably have plenty of time to get to some questions. So as people trickle in, which seems to be the case, the theme this week really started to arise as intimacy. Intimacy and innocence. That showed up a lot in conversations. And it seems like this sense of innocence is what the identity is constantly, seemingly attempting to cover up through a sense of knowledge, through a sense of knowing, of certainty. It seems like the force that is innocence is curiosity itself. And to engage with curiosity, there's a whole variety of other aspects of what it is to be in contact with our authenticity. Yet I think if we really look at our truest nature, and if we look at what authenticity really means, it has that flavor, that fragrance of innocence. It's pretty interesting. A lot of people will report throughout this process having this feeling of aging in reverse almost. They'll have these Benjamin Button experiences, seemingly going back in time. They'll have flashbacks of memories of being in their childhood home, and without getting attached to the story too much, there's something to that, this innocence. So to put it in another way, anytime we come into contact with anything that feels certain, it's worthwhile to open that up a little bit. We could say that certainty itself is where experience goes to die. It's a graveyard. It's a death of experiences. That kind of certainty itself prevents us from examining beliefs. Belief itself is predicated on certainty. So in the past, I've mentioned maybe to live under the softness of maybe. You can also say that anything that seems to arise in a sense of certainty, to allow yourself to maybe place the word maybe at the end of that statement or that notion. And that is immediately an invitation for curiosity. So we could just put it this way. Maybe is an invitation for curiosity. And those experiences and those beliefs begin to illuminate quite a bit more. This sense of innocence is so interesting. When we are interacting with each other and there's a sense of vulnerability there, when people are completely opened up, that innocence is what seems to show. You might also find that a sense of humiliation and a sense of vulnerability are essentially one and the same. The only difference is one is being narrated by thoughts. The other one is more along the lines of our truest nature. And if you ever spend any time out in nature or just observing the way that animals move or the birds are hopping around from branch to branch, there is a very vivid sense of innocence to that. And how could we be separate? How could we know better? So, at least for this particular meeting, see if you can allow yourself to tap into a little bit more innocence, some vulnerability, some openness. And just let that basically speak for itself. Intuition is innocence. Curiosity is innocence. Freedom of creative expression, sexual expression, courage to engage in that way. That's all innocence. And I guess we'll see what happens. All right. Thank you all for being here today. In America, I think a lot of you are here in the US. We did have Thanksgiving this week, and I just wanted to remind every one of you, I was able to reach out to quite a few of you, but I am very grateful just to be able to share this space, to be able to interact. It's so strange. It feels absolutely humbling to be able to just know any and all of you. Really, it does. So thanks for being here and hanging out. And let's do some discovery today. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, I didn't go over the basics. At the very bottom, if you're not super familiar with Zoom, there's a button that says reactions. You can raise hands there. And then I will be able to call on you in an order. And keep yourself muted, please, until we get to your question, and that will prevent too much of a cacophony of sound. But we are ready to roll. Who has something that, I mean, even a share is worthwhile. What's great about this space is a lot of you, I've already worked with one-on-one quite a few times. And so you might find a lot of crossover here, almost maybe a sense of something that feels like a community. All right, it looks like Anna. Go ahead.
Hello, Josh.
Hi. What's happening?
My heart is jumping out. Public speech, social anxiety.
I get it. And you know what? I really applaud you for, taking these steps.
It's only way to break through. So I came across today something, and I was sitting there, just like visual field. I know, like time ago, I was walking and that question raised, a question just came up in the head. Is this like seeing really coming from eyes? So, like I looked and it's more like here than from here, but I still like perceive it very dual, a subject object. And so I was sitting with this visual field today, and I can see there is just this here. What is this here? But here it feels like there is something like holding, trying to hold, because I could feel that is that like contraction, and that wouldn't let go. Because I know if that would let go, it would you just merge into everything. And that sense of center, that's like artificial thing. I can sense that, like when there is sounds and like this visual, but still something here wants to hold. So I don't know what it is. And like I was thinking, like you can't really force it, because if you force it, then you kind of reinforce that it's actual real thing.
Yeah.
But yesterday I was standing and watching through the window, and that's visual thing. And then it just came up. I was so subtle, I couldn't really catch what it is, but it felt like there is this visual, the body, and it's all like one. And then here is like something added here besides the body, like like a double rainbow, like reflection, but not reflection as in a mirror, but like reflection in the puddle, like very transparent, like something you can't really, but something is there, but that's like a glitch in the system. I can't understand. I can see something, but I can't put my hands on. And I was walking today in the shop, and then I was thinking, like there are times when like that sense of self of me just becomes quite transparent, and like like, oh, like I'm losing myself, I can't grasp myself. But today was like, that's I actually never been in a body. And actually never been in the body. That's just completely not right. It's been experienced through the body, but that's what I am, whatever I am, never been in the body. Every time this thought comes in, like I'm losing myself, I can't get myself. That's that's just not right. It was just so clear. But I'm still experiencing, you know, like very subject objects. There is no non-duality. If
Yeah.
you can maybe speak on that.
This
And
is
also another question, I came across like a restlessness and unsettlement last week. No, actually this week, yeah, a couple of days ago. It was just, you know, just to do something, just do something, just do. And it just feels like, you know, we are being like electrocuted, but there's no, it just like that unsettlement. And I was like, yeah, okay, do what? And there's nothing. It just do anything, but just do something. Just like panic.
yeah, that
So there are two questions like this.
that's a classic mechanism of identity is do something, gotta do something, gotta do something, gotta do something. It's essentially emotion from stillness. We can kind of get into a little bit more of that as well. This sense of self, these experiences that feel really certain. Something that is heard here quite a bit is contraction, the word contraction, as if that means something, but it doesn't. So here's the number one thing I will point to when it comes to a sense of something that's contracted is what makes you so certain about what a contraction is? Because there's a certainty there. There's an assumption taking place that a contraction means something else. In other words, it's relating to something. A contraction is just simply a contraction. And so whatever is arising, whatever you are noticing, that's all there is. If you're not having a sense of, this is supposed to lead to a sense of non-duality, this is supposed to lead to a sense of no self, if you let those things go, because those are just thought objects, those don't exist. None of that actually is real. And you get to a place that is immediate and direct, you begin to have a sense of curiosity about what seems to be arising or what appearances are making themselves known. And from there, it just happens on its own. This is really an effortless experience. This is an allowance. This is an unfolding, and it's just happening on its own. Do we need to get in the way? Do we need to add anything to the experience? And that's what it really comes down to. So when it comes to the visual field and a sense of self, there's nothing wrong with that. It just is begging you to be examined. It is begging you to allow curiosity to take you into that experience itself. Attention is so strange because attention is wide. It seems to be encompassing this entire universe. But there's this sense when we are conceptualized that it's being bottled up into small space, wherever that may be, in thought. If we allow that attention to go wherever something is being noticed immediately, what happens is we start to see that attention is everywhere and it has a width about it. It's in more than one place simultaneously, more and more and more and more. And then we have a sense that we kind of flip inside out. There is no center of attention. Attention is everything. It is almost as if all of this is an expression of form, and wherever the attention goes is where it goes. We aren't agents behind that experience. So if you can let go of where this may lead more and more and more, and just bring yourself to what is current, then even feeling deeply invested into a sense of self by being completely with that experience, that is this. Even that is this. It's the displacement of experience for a future event or a past experience or something other. That is what it wants you to do. All thought is begging you to react. And if you react, you are likely to step away from that which is current right here, right now. And what's so strange about this is when it comes to the mind doesn't have a problem actually with the past. It doesn't have a problem with the future because it's created those constructs. It knows those things. That is certainty. Even if we're, have a maybe with a future event, it still has a sense of certainty to it based on past experience. What the mind cannot orient to for some reason is right here, right now. This is the unknown. This is the unknowable. And so if you allow yourself to settle into that space, which is already happening, you're essentially falling awake right now. Allow yourself to fall awake. You start to see these mechanisms that are doing everything they can to pull you out. Do something, get out, run, hide, do something. cannot run, you cannot hide. That realization that starts to come into full fruition, the more we allow ourselves to be immersed in the moment, can be frightening for some people, can be absolutely relieving for others. It's the same thing. You can't go anywhere.
No.
And here's another little happy note for you. You can't make a wrong turn, because where are you going to go? You can't take a step outside of this, no matter what. So there's no wrong turn. When we point, what we're really pointing to is that which is most direct. Whatever the direct experience is, you feel sensation, you are in that sensation, you are immersed in that sensation, you're bathed in that sensation, and simultaneously notice the thoughts, notice the narrative, notice what it's attempting to create out of it. That's the assumption, that's the interpretation, that is removal from what is direct. And you can notice it without being it. You'll see that more and more often. This is why it's convenient to point to sensation and say, whatever you feel, just be it. Be what is felt. And I think what you'll start to notice is there's certain sensations that you're just like, hell no, I don't want to feel that at all. And that's where the mechanism starts kicking in. Boom, boom, got to do something, got to run, got to hide, got to, maybe I should get online. Maybe I should get on Amazon. I heard it's Cyber Monday tomorrow. It's going to be great. You know what I mean? All of these particular convenient distractions are truly, strangely, fundamentally pulling us away from a sense of loneliness, a sense of
lack.
Oh, it's all predicated on, so for some reason, and this is the weird part, sitting in this position, I'm not doing anything special at all. There's nothing special occurring here. It's just the clarity of seeing that the identity is a collective experience for all human beings. That's it. It's collective, but it's convincing us because this relative reality of forms that's right here is somehow unique, even though the identity is collective and not unique at all. It convinces us that this is about us. This is personal, and the center of existence is here. Go to that center. Go completely to the center. Become the center of that experience, whatever it is, if it's sensation, whatever it is. And you might start to have a sense of, I don't notice anything at this center. There's a big realization there. And also, as you go, just a little pointing this out, if it gets to a place where you start to feel maybe more apathetic or resigned, so to speak, that actually can be a really good sign, because resignation and realization are this far apart. Resignation has thought associated. Realization is full immersion in that experience. But the more you feel, the more you realize that everything is fundamentally okay. And then you see what the mechanism, if you can watch what the mechanism is doing from the very outset, and seemingly for a human being, it seems the way to be able to do that is be immersed so much in the moment, especially in these sensations. The reason I'm pointing to these emotional center sensations is because that's where our primary beliefs live. For some reason, this is sadness. Oh, this is anger. It's a sense of certainty about something. And what happens with certainty is we take it and we put it into a collection of experience, and we say, I know everything about it. I'm not going to experience it anymore. I'm going to stay distracted from that space. Explore those things, because to be honest with you, when it comes to suffering, it's the same thing. It hasn't been fully explored. And this is not coming from a place of judgment at all, but it's clear that the majority of humankind has no clue what pain is at all. All they know is what resistance and avoidance feel like. That's it. But if you fully, completely immerse yourself in that which seems untenable and painful, you find nothing there. It's a beautiful thing. Because then you go, wait, am I in this for the elimination of suffering? Or am I in this to discover if it exists at all? That type of inquiry is entirely different. And you get bonuses. It just seems to be this way. Visual field, audio field, all of these are also just clues, by the way, because a lot of people can have a very powerful kensho, but this place is still vastly unexplored. And that's why things can get a lot more difficult after kensho, because they can't ignore this anymore. But now it's just all the time they're noticing things coming up, and this mechanism saying, nope, not that, not that, not that. And it's like this fight, this push-pull that can start to show up. This is just cutting straight to the chase. Go into that which you don't like to see what's so bad about it. And then what you will start to realize is everything exactly as it is perfection. It needs no manipulation, no diversion, no distraction, no change. I can be with everything exactly the way it is. Something very, very beautiful about that. Even story belongs. Even the identity belongs. It all belongs, but it's accessory. It's accessory to the experience that is direct. That's it. It doesn't run the show. It's just convinced us that it's in charge. It's like an autoimmune disorder. You know how if you have an autoimmune disorder, it starts going after healthy parts of the body. It's very similar to that. It's basically creating a reason to protect where there is none. And if there's a reason to protect where there is none, that's going to feel quite a bit like suffering. It's going to feel like we live in a state of emergency for the majority of our experience. That's pretty intense. And it's like these fragments of energy that we call thought. It's just this swirling space of liquid color, it seems. And the identity somehow is acting like a little claw machine and going, grabbing pieces and going, does it fit the frame? Nope, that one doesn't fit. Rejected. Oh, that one fits. Oh, that one fits. And it's all just a constant series of confirmation biases. Boom, 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 boom. Does it fit? Does it fit? Does it fit? For this character, it used to be, I am unlovable and unloved. It's impossible to love me. And everything I ever saw in existence, everywhere, interactions with human beings, I mean, even stupid things like weather patterns were a confirmation of how I am unlovable and unloved. So strange. So once you see that mechanism for what it truly is, something becomes very clear and you go, oh, nothing really changes out here, but in here, there's nothing to hold on to. There's nothing to stick. There's no one home. That's a very unique experience, but not unique at all.
About protecting something. It's one day I was, something came up and it feels like there's like a pit bull there, like a size of a cow sitting and protecting something, like, protecting what? Something extremely vulnerable, something like childlike. And it wouldn't even like myself let to say it, just like, no, no, no.
But this is beautiful. Do you hear what you're pointing to right now? It's exactly what we began this satsang with. It's innocence. Because innocence feels so open that it feels fragile at first.
Yes.
We get right back in touch with it, but it is the most ubiquitous, powerful force, if you will, that's like an equivalent of gravity in this universal plane. This is all just innocence. There's no reason. There's no cause. It just is. To be in that space, you find something that is immutable, unchangeable. There's no reason to fight it anyway, because it's never going to go anywhere. It is already here. And then what we see is there's this sense of resistance and avoidance to that which cannot be resisted or avoided. And that's where all this experience, this perception of suffering, that's where it stems. This is why it's so great to have pets. If you have any pets, cats and dogs or whatever pets, they're innocent. They're just so innocent. Even with all the training, they just do what they do. Have this big dog, Amadeus. He's huge. He's about 150 pounds or something close to 70 kilos. Big dog. And he thinks his entire existence, and I'm saying think, it's not think. It's just what he's made out of. It's to protect. That's just his jam, just to bark and look intimidating. He's not aggressive, but he's like, this is what I do. That's innocence. He's not doing it for any reason. It's just what he's made of. So, in a very human way, in a very relative way, this journey toward authenticity, just being what you truly are, somehow is also a journey toward no self. So you can just let go of no self. Let it go. Just be with everything exactly as it is, and it arises on its own.
About resistance and desires, wants, don't want. I was driving yesterday all day, and then at evening time, like roads were busy and it was dark and like body exhausted and nervous system was like, on the verge to give up.
Mm.
And then there was like one traffic jam, another traffic jam, and third traffic jam. One moment, just explosion. Can't handle it anymore. So I reflected back to that experience today, and then they actually not that much wants, but every want is coming from something I don't want.
Oh yeah, every desire
And
is an expression of.
yeah, yeah, there is no actually want without I don't want.
That's all
If you
about
if
resistance. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And then, like when I look back, it's actually not that much, like I don't want as much. I can't handle it. I can't hold it. It's just too much. I need space. I need space. I can't. I can't. It's just coming from a place of helplessness and powerlessness.
This is all about being helpless.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I could really clearly see today, what that resistance is.
But even that sensation that you're speaking of, the one that felt like you couldn't handle it, that's all you need to spend time with. What is most immediate? That's where curiosity is taking you. Become obliterated and annihilated in the sensation that you cannot handle. This is the Buddha metaphor at the base of the Bodhi tree, where Mara comes and lights him on fire and he's sitting there burning alive. Temptation, desire, temptation, desire. And he no longer has any external resistances or avoidances. And inside, he reaches absolute stillness and just allows himself to be consumed in the flame. That metaphor is pointing to this intensity. And in that space, as he just allows, he erupts immediately into nirvana. This is the metaphor. It's what is most immediate that feels like we can't handle it. That is where curiosity is going, and it is revealing something. Allow it to do so. And I know while you're driving, it's not quite as easy, right? But
no, it wasn't the right moment.
yeah, but if there's remnants of that, when you have a space to sit with it, this is taking that hot iron, placing it in the mouth, and neither being able to spit it out or swallow it. It is resting with that which feels untenable, unbelievably massive. That's what all of this is really pointing to. And it's you in the grand scheme. It's this I am. It is this no separation. It is you being the universe. It is you being the God. It is you actually allowing yourself to be so. That seems to be the death of an identity, which is scary because at identity, there was a point where it was like watching this little skinny kid without a shirt on doing everything he could, dying daily, struggling, scratched up, crying just to manage some sort of orientation. And there was even a sense of grief there, watching this little boy just wallow in utter agony. And watching the identity in that sense too, that can occur as well. It just seems to be part of it. But you got this. Just continue to allow. Don't worry about the narrative. The narrative is going to be created anyway, just so you know. It happens on its own. You don't even need to participate in it. You can just watch it. Oh, you're creative. Thanks. Wow, that was an interesting thought. Fragments just being captured by the claw machine.
A fear response. One day I was sitting, like, I'm not calling meditation, I'm sitting. So I was sitting and just, like merging into music. I'm just like, there's no heads, it's just like waterfall. There's no bodies, it's just like a flow. And next thing, like very, very strong fear response came up. And it was like devils, like red devils, just, like changing forms. And her body just like, like a small scared child, like literally just crying. They're just sitting shaking and crying and crying and shaking. Once that fear response was over, I was like a small child's cry came out and released all.
That's it. Just like that. This is what we call, fear of the unknown is such a funny term. Fear of the unknown is redundant. Fear is just the sensation of that which cannot be known or which is entirely unknowable. That's all it is. So what's so wrong with fear? No one really seems to know what fear is because we can't know it.
There's nothing wrong. It's just, like I just feel so panicky at that moment. Like
Let
you
it
can't handle it.
take you, and you will, in some strange way, this begins to show up. We seem to be able to prove to identity that we're going to be okay, and it starts to let itself go just by allowing ourselves to experience that which is immediate and present, no matter what it is. And I think the more we sit, everyone here at this satsang might notice this as well. If there's any struggle in life, it's happening now. You can feel it now. So you can tap into it now. That's all I'm pointing to here. It's not going anywhere. Just be with it exactly as it is. It is an ultimate piece of our innocence. And yeah, the devils and all these things, it's just imagery that the mind really wants to trigger so that you go, I got to do something. And then you do something. Oh, all right. We continue this cycle. But even that's okay. It's okay to take breaks. For some of us, this particular aspect of things can take a while. This character went through 6 months of death, essentially. Not everyone has that. Yet there was some stubbornness here. There was some clinging to a sense of, I will tolerate until this alleviates. In other words, this will be over, so I'll hang out. I wasn't letting it take. There was still a sense of not gonna let it take me. And there was also, for the first time in a long time, I was feeling cheated because the first time in a long time, I did not want to die. And it felt like it was going to kill me. And I was just like, no, I don't want to die. And when is this going to be over? I don't want to die. When is this going to be over? Over and over and over and over. And then every time there was a sense of relief or a sense of space, I would attach to this thought. Whew, okay, I'm done. There is no end. That's a big thing to say. I know that can feel rather scary too, but there is no end. This continues. Even death is no end. There is no end.
I just know that. I don't know how, but I know that.
Well, welcome. Welcome to the party.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it looks like we have a session coming up too, so we'll talk more about it there.
Okay.
Nice to see you.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah. I really got into it. Thanks for everybody for hanging out. That one. Let's go Paul next.
Good day, Josh.
Hello, my Australian friend. What's new? Nice to see you.
Thanksgiving. Yeah, you too. Thanks for the Sangha. It's great. So it's Sydney time. It's early here. So I wake up, and of course the first thought is, okay, what's the issue and what's the new issue to deal with? And so I teach a pretty big class, and so the idea of being innocent and vulnerable with this group is kind of terrifying because the idea is that I'm the boss, I'm the one who actually needs to know what he's doing. So they're actually quite young, so it's the year 4, but it's really quite a journey in terms of being authentic, being available, being vulnerable, being innocent. And the idea is that not everyone wants to play that game. And so, I'm finding I'm a bit stretched between trying to keep this control and trying to sort of just actually turn up and let go of control. So there's a little bit of a dichotomy here.
There is something really beautiful about vulnerability in the sense that when we are completely engaged with that, no one else needs to participate at all. So maybe you can inquire, feel into, however it wants to show up, where the hang up shows up in terms of this has to be a mutual experience. It has to be, there's a requirement for that. Because I think what you'll find there is maybe a sense of certainty or a belief lingering. And that by itself is just another thought. That's it.
Mhm.
Can we be entirely vulnerable without any mutual participation at all? This is your superpower. This is what it is to love and lose over and over for those of us who've been through relationships in that way, and to continue to access that which is most vulnerable.
Mhm.
It has nothing to do with anyone else.
Mhm. Yeah. Uh, it, it doesn't make any sense because, of course, all my training in this job of being a teacher is about knowing what I'm doing. It just feels so at odds with what what I've been up to for a couple of decades now. I'm kind of square. I can do this in this company. I can be kind of open and vulnerable, and but I'm trying to do it in the classroom. I'm finding that I'm not quite sure how to.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's so being a parent. Sometimes the kids will ask particular things here at this house that are inherently, the answer will just come out in a very kind of clean, effortless way. It'll show up externally as no, even though there's nothing internal that feels like a no. And so there's going to be an aspect of intuition there as well. There's going to be a sense of boundaries that are probably more practically oriented, but to be in access with that is also a state of vulnerability. It's not what it appears externally. It's what it feels like internally. This is the entire world that we address. And so there might be times where it shows up externally to enter into a place of vulnerability in that way. It's a matter of when it seems like there's that gritty kind of need to step into a place of control or management. That's a great time to pay attention. That's all it is. Because I think what you'll find is there will be a flow. There will still be practical boundaries that seem to arise working with these kids. And somehow that feels effortless and clean. It's not really an either or. That's just how this construct of duality wants to play itself out. It's either you got to manage or you got to let go and let them walk all over you. That's what the mind is saying. But there's a third space, full engagement. And that full engagement might feel rather vulnerable and personal sometimes, but it's not really falling into complete management and authoritarian mode, nor is it giving up and letting them walk all over you mode. It's in a strange way, entering into that place of vulnerability is an enrollment, and kids are the best at this because they have a lot less identity that they're clinging onto, and they're likely to want to participate because you as a leader are taking those steps. And so once again, I might have said this sometime in the past, the most powerful form of leadership is just example. It's showing up at full capacity, full engagement, full immersion. And even adults, everyone, somehow that's such an attractive human being who's like completely engaged in that way. They just want to take part. Authenticity is impossible to ignore. It's the people that are compensating through a sense of control. And I don't get that from you. I'm not pointing that direction, but this is the extreme. Those who are compensating for feeling something, feeling a deep sense of lack, that enter into a state of authority and control. It's clear that it's compensation. Even for those who don't have the thoughts surrounding that experience, there's just it doesn't quite feel right.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that feels good. So the clarity doesn't. Sometimes the validation is sourced, outside, but it feels like the clarity is what matters, and just come from that place, and just move from that sense of presence here, rather than look for that confirmation, with these students.
It's not about results. That we make that up. Results are entirely made up. What is it like in the moment all the time? And I think what you'll find is that's all that really matters. You know what I do appreciate though is your willingness to experiment through some of the texts that you have sent. There's a lot of that. Continue. The experimentation is paying off. You're actually engaging in a completely authentic way. That's beautiful. I mean, it's
No, it's cool. And yeah, I appreciate your, your living proof of how this goes down. So appreciate your example too.
Well, there is no separation, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, like this is shared, and who knows how that shows up for you, but you're
Mm-hmm.
not removed from any of this. That's for sure.
Cool.
Nice to see you, man.
You too.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah, Thomas.
Hey, Josh, good to see you. Good to see everybody. Intimacy is sort of my favorite cliff because I've craved it all my life. I've done workshops, I've read the books, I've done inquiry, I've had many relationships, and I guess I've always had this thought that there's sort of some perfect relationship, some perfect person out there that I'm going to be in a relationship with. We're like totally like-minded. Everything's going to click, and like that has never happened, right? So there have been various attempts, and I think it's a thought. It's something I've had in my mind. In a way, it's an obsession because I'm kind of half retired, so I have a lot of time on my hands. I'm single, divorced, no kids, and the thing I crave most, intimacy with another person, seems to be the thing that's most elusive. I have had the last couple of relationships I've had after seeing the person 6 or 8 times. I've just said, hey, there's nothing here. We're not going deep. There's there's not much beyond the sort of the chatter stage. So as you can tell by my dialogue, I've had a lot of suffering in this, and I've at different times just said, hey, I have to just let this go, that any attempt to contact someone, to find someone, just ends up not happening, not being satisfying. So anyway, it's I guess in the area of consciousness and awakening, of course I always thought once I'm fully awakened, like everything will be cherries, cake, and ice cream, right? Everything will just be heaven. And I've had glimpses of awakening. I haven't I don't think I've had a breakthrough on it. And it's in terms of like going after it, trying to get intimacy, going to bars, going to places, chatting up women, chatting up men, going on websites, having hookups, all that. It has gotten me nowhere. So the only alternative is just like to do nothing, right? Which is really scary. And like, I guess my main experience in doing nothing is that like, it's boring. Nothing happens. Like there's little aliveness. Like, I'm sitting here by myself. I'm going out for a walk in nature. I'm, watching some video or something. So it's intimacy is like I've gone around the round and then the other way.
Yeah.
So from I heard some of your songs for the first time a month or so ago, and I noticed they had a theme of identity, which got me interested, because identity is something that I think I have a lot of, and I've tried to deconstruct it, and yet it's you know, it's like my skin. I mean, like I've been unable to completely deconstruct my identity. Again, I have the feeling like if I were totally deconstructed, there'd be nothing, like to be scary, nothing to hold on to. And so and I guess, you know, identity, it's like the clothing we wear, right? The things we do with our lives, the people we know, our job, how we make money, how we support ourselves, relationships, all that stuff. So identity, it's been a conundrum to me, because as much as I sometimes think, you know, I need to shed it, and that it's just all attachments, it seems to follow me. It seems to be like a skin, you know, like I'm unable to completely let go of it. So that's where I'm coming from right now.
Yeah. Intimacy. Intimacy is free from requirement. Intimacy is a for the identity will feel like a sense of helplessness. Whatever it is that we chase will continue to elude us, and whatever it is that we run from will continue to chase. It is for some reason exactly this way. And it's probably because of the frame, the construct of what this reality seems to be. We can never reach satisfaction at all if we have a fundamental belief that we are lacking. We will never, ever reach satisfaction. It would be like going to an ice cream shop and seeing a sign that says free ice cream tomorrow. So you're like, oh, sweet. You go home, you come back the next day, the sign says free ice cream tomorrow, free ice cream tomorrow. Every time you go, it says free ice cream tomorrow. That's the nature of saying there's something out there that's going to fill this hole. That's why it is that identity itself is the very precursor, the crux, the creator of that which appears to be suffering. It's pretty intensely that way. So ultimately, if there's a requirement around what intimacy seems to be, you're never going to find fulfillment in that way, because it's always going to move the bar automatically, because it's predicating from a sense of lacking. This is now a matter of stillness and letting intimacy arise right here. And that sensation of boredom, there is no sensation more interesting than the sensation of boredom if we allow ourselves to be immersed in that place. And I know it can feel extremely uncomfortable. And there's a lot of mechanisms that kick in. Get on YouTube, go do something, drink some alcohol, whatever it is. That's telling us something, that it doesn't want to reveal something underneath whatever this experience seems to be right here, right now. And it can feel like quite a hump to get over at first. But the more we touch it, the more we entertain it, the more we allow ourselves to be immersed in this state of allowance, strangely enough, everything we've ever needed has been here the whole time. It just becomes very clear. And intimacy just arises. But I think really where you're pointing, and I know this can come from a place that almost sounds therapeutic. This is not therapy, but intimacy with ourselves, intimacy with this experience, that's all intimacy truly is. Full engagement and allowance of what is, truly. And you will start to see that other human beings will share that with us almost automatically, and that it's always been there somehow, but we've had this blockage up of this is not enough, this is not enough, this is not enough. It's tricky. But ultimately, it's not out there. It seems that way, and I know it's extremely compelling that it's out there. But once that identity starts to wind itself down, because that's kind of what it's like. It's interesting. If we allow identity to play itself out, it loses momentum. It's almost like an echo that we just allow to echo until it becomes imperceptible. See if you can notice the reactions that it's triggering that is amplifying that sense of identity, and see if you could just sometimes say, not this time, not going to do it, not going to engage. And I think what you'll find is thought itself leading to belief, leading to identity, all these constructs that seem to be created by identity or by whatever it seems to be, that it's all just made up. And if you let them play themselves out, it's a very Wizard of Oz type of experience. Because the whole time it's basically telling you to pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. But as soon as you see that man behind the curtain, it loses its mystique entirely.
But don't you still have an identity, Josh? Wouldn't you say?
Seems pretty fluid. There's a
But
lot.
I mean, you know, let me tell you what I identify you. Perhaps this is my identity of, I mean, I identify you. You're some kind of acting coach. You're a satsang leader. You live in Denver. You know, you have kids. I mean, so that's, you know, my characterization of you as identity. And are you saying, I mean, some of those things obviously are true, but are you saying you don't identify with them, or you don't hold them, or what would you say?
It's kind of it's difficult to describe, but sometimes people will use the name Josh and it just doesn't, I don't know, not me. So I've had somebody call me Jason for an entire day, and that was fine. And then he found out later that my name was Josh, and he said, "Why didn't you correct me?" And I'm like, Jason's good enough. It's strange. It just doesn't feel solid. In fact, the majority of anything that could seem like identity is coming from other people's thoughts, even people in this family, in this home, you know, or neighbors. Aren't you the meditation guy? Sure. Some mornings I
mean, you don't have attachment to it.
It just doesn't feel real. It feels entirely made up, like a dream, the whole idea of an identity. But what I can say is there's no impulse or desire that leads toward anything. Like, the only reason I'm sitting here with you is because there was enough requests for it. There was no desire for it. The whole idea of creating a nonprofit using the money from these satsangs and the YouTube channel, that came from some other source, and there's still no desire for it. It's just wherever there seems to be momentum and inertia, it's like being a part of that. It feels absolutely like at any given moment, all of this is just gone. Nothing is really consistent. It feels free, and to the mind that can seem entirely chaotic, but I think we're all this way at our truest nature, truly. Yet it's a matter of allowing ourselves access to that, because I think if you look through the narrative and you start to see kind of what's being imposed, it's like being forced. It feels like an effort. Then we get a place of, well, I don't have to. But identity is that which feels absolutely certain. And so if you can come in contact with those and maybe add a little bit of some curiosity to it, it starts to loosen up on its own. What's so strange is you don't get to deconstruct identity. It somehow is deconstructing itself. And it's been doing that since the dawn of the experience of identity. Can you allow it to deconstruct itself? That's kind of what that experience is. And that really is what it means to come in contact with stillness. Meditation is a wonderful way to become acquainted with stillness. Because what we start to see is there's a lot of reactivity associated with thought. And that leads to compulsive desire. And ultimately, we find that thought itself is an addictive experience. To avoid something else as a cycle, ultimately leading to a sense of shame or lack of self-worth, sending us right back into the cycle again and again, these trigger moments. And when we're in the midst of a trigger, we think it's out here or someone else did it. But that whole experience has started much earlier. It's just addiction to thought. What is life like without thought? What is life like without belief? What is this moment like without a thought needing to accompany the moment. And I think what you start to find is there's a lot more here. And this is an accessory to the experience of this. The one thing here, I'll just put it in a very human way. You allow yourself to feel more, feel everything, feel it all the way. You just start to feel better. Start with that.
Okay. Thanks, Josh. Good to be with you.
Yeah, man. Nice to see you. All right. Is it Jahira?
It could be Jahira or Jahida or Jason.
Oh, I like Hi, Jason. Jahida. I like that. Jahida. That's good.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for all your videos. I love your stuff on YouTube. I'm always so moved by it.
Oh, thanks.
You can hear me all right, right?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay. Okay, first, my heart's beating fast, so I guess this is nervous.
Maybe it's excitement.
Yeah, maybe that too, right?
You know, opening up is exhilarating.
Yeah.
Being seen is energetic.
Hmm. So I did have a glimpse a few months ago where everything was obvious that there was no me and that this is just random. Everything is randomly happening, and that that my whole life I was believing that thought could fix this, and there was a moment where I was like, oh, it's just this. Like I finally got the cosmic joke that they talk about. And it was beautiful, and it was just, yeah, like the whole parenting thing became effortless. Everything was effortless. And there was just a moving. Everything was just randomly moving and happening without the fear trying to guide this. An example I use is that I was always afraid of my little boy being on the screen too much.
Chester.
And Thomas is not muted.
Got him.
There we go. There was I came to another meeting, and I was talking to one of the guides about what if I can't let him be on the screen that much, I have to do the right thing and make sure that he has about, just everything, my thoughts telling me about statistics, and basically that I could control this. So, but then once I had the glimpse, it was like, oh, I have no idea what's going to happen. Like, this could be the best thing for him. Like, how could I know? How could I, in the explosion of this happening in every moment, how could I figure out what, and that was the thing too, like I used to look at statistics, and it's like, but statistics, like 90%, it went this way. 90% of mothers who let their kids use screens, their kids end up like this. But then I was like, oh, but then I never thought about, well, you could be in that 10%. I always just was afraid of the 90%. And so anyways, I just basically realized that it's random. So things became easier, but then as the months went by, there's still some kind of, like you say, this cycle, this mechanism that says, no, you have to do your best to control the outcome of this. so I started doing some of the Feder work to see, like, well, it was obvious to me when I had that glimpse that, like, yeah, this is so random, but still now I am back in that part of the cycle where I'm believing the thoughts that say, you must control this. So that's why I started doing the Feder work, because, you know, the Feders, it's kind of like 10 layers that intertwine of the illusion, 10 layers of this illusion, right? And so I was doing the Feder work about, with, you know, Feder, it's like desire and ill will, where you remember something that happened in your childhood, and then you kind of intone the sentence and get back to that thing you've been avoiding, right? So something happened in my childhood where my father shamed me. And like you said, I was able to feel what I didn't want to feel. And I sat with that, and it's the sobbing and the crying and the despair and the, you know, I could sit with it, and until I couldn't remember what happened. It was like you know, after a few days of doing that, I couldn't remember. So, but basically, what is this mechanism? There's still a mechanism that says you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
So how do I look at that? I mean, after seeing that it's random, it's like everything that I do now in practice is pure curiosity. It's not like I have to get back to that place. It's just like what is this? What is that? Why is that still happening? Why does this happen still?
Yeah, there's a few places to point here. Let's just look primarily to start with that sense of doubt. Doubt is just simply distraction. That's all it is. When you feel that sense of doubt, there's something sensational about that experience. That is what wants to be avoided through the sense of doubt. So we could say doubt is essentially the reluctance to engage with what is, then justified by thought. Anytime you have a sense of why, or you're searching for the why, just know that's a distraction. The why won't help you. The why doesn't exist. If you immerse yourself into the effect and not search for the cause, then you will be present. And that's what this is, being with what is. It's wanting to refer to past experience or anticipation or expectation of something, which are both distractions from what is here now, what is immediate. So to sit with doubt, you will notice a sense of something that probably feels uncomfortable. That's when the voice seems to get the loudest. When there's a sense of no. Be with the no until you don't know what the no is. Just like that other experience. Be that with all things as they seem to appear or arise. We can't know this as a why. That's just the mind creating cause and effect relationships with everything. This is more about what cannot be known. This is also going to ultimately reveal a lot more about intuition. Intuition has no why either. It just is. When you are completely in contact with intuition, it feels effortless because it is. Once the why starts to creep back in, we are basically obscuring intuition for cause and effect relationship. And it's just pattern. It's just habit. It has its own inertia. It's okay. It's not a problem. Just stay engaged. That's all. Completely engaged. And that means what is most immediate is all there is to pay attention to. And it might seem like the doubt is primary, but I think what you'll start to realize is you are primarily a sensational being having these secondary reflective experiences that we call thought. Because once the particular mechanism that grabs a thought, it wants to apply it and create a relationship. It wants to create reference. But there is no reference. There's no why.
There is no reference.
And one more thing to point to for you, and this is just, I'm being gentle with this. Sometimes people will take up feder work because there's an attachment to something that is formulaic, which is an attachment to a why, a fixation on why. So I'm not telling you to do anything about that. Just inquire and sit with that and see, is it satisfying something that the mind seems to want or need? Because ultimately you already have everything you need built in. There is no practice. It's already here.
Yeah, I could see that.
And I'm
But
not
like,
saying that intuitively
no.
I know something either. This is just, these words just kind of come out. So no idea.
No, I'm wondering about you said your mechanism was, I'm not lovable.
Yeah, it predicates itself on some belief that we can call it our first wound. We can call it our first belief. That is the sticking place of lacking that the identity seems to use as a fulcrum point for our entire lives. So
yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like you saw through that.
Yes, by feeling it. By no longer avoiding the sensations and the experiences and that entire sense of what felt painful, instead of running from it, instead of leaning into it, it was just a constant state of allowing it to be, allowing it to reveal itself. To be completely immersed with what is, exactly as it is, with no need to change it, interpret it, or cover it up. For you, there might be something, this inquiry can be useful. What wants to hide? What wants to remain hidden? And that doesn't necessarily mean for other people or even in this environment, but it can sometimes show up that way. It's just pointing back to something here that doesn't want to be addressed. It's okay if there's a little bit of a story too, just pointing that out. But eventually we'll need to let that go because that's just reaffirming the reason why we avoid or the reason why we resist something.
Because it wants to stay hidden.
It wants to remain hidden, yes. It might be something that's pointing to even that sensation that you were experiencing upon first asking the question. Stay with that. Stay with that feeling. If it subsides, it subsides. That's fine too. But stay with it as fully as possible. The first thing is the only thing is everything. So when you notice doubt, there's something that's triggering that thought to say, I know what this is. That's secondary. Every thought is secondary. What is primarily happening? And I think what you'll find is there's no question to answer. It's just seemingly a sensational experience.
Okay, so the doubt meaning any kind of doubt, not just doubt about, damn, am I making the right choice by letting my daughter do this, or any kind of doubt, any thought that comes in that says, am I doing this right? Or right. And that's what you mean by doubt?
Yeah, because, okay, so that secondary process, we could just call that hesitation. It's the dilemma. Is this right or is this wrong? Is this right or is this wrong? That's obscuring something. But let's play a quick game. I want you to just pick a color and say it out loud. Go.
Red.
That's intuition. It's not related to anything. There's no reason why. That's what it's like to live effortlessly. Now you don't even need to reflect on why you chose red. Doesn't matter. That's thought. Intuition, just red. Spontaneous,
yes.
Immediate.
But sometimes that's what I'm saying. Like when I had the glimpse, that was the intuition was all there was. But aren't you also driven by the illusion sometimes, the wound? You're driven by the wound sometimes. No?
Well, of course, in a human experience, it seems that way for sure. But just know that that wound is the first thing. That's all that needs addressing. That's what I'm pointing to. Even the wound, the sensation, that experience is that quick. As quick as you said red, that's where it is. So if you notice yourself in a state of dilemma, that's the distraction place. If you notice yourself in a state of doubt, that's being distracted from something that's right here. That's all. So use that as a mechanism to remind yourself to check in as deeply as possible in any given moment. What do you notice? Do you notice your breathing changing? And it just check in.
Sometimes when I do that, because, you know, when you have little kids, they're like, you know, we need you. And it's like, I have been there before with my kids where like, I'm like, you know, so I'm feeling the sensations and I'm staying there and they're looking at me like, what are you doing? Like, mama, what's wrong? You know, like they're like, what are you doing?
You know how powerful
do something.
You know how powerful of a form of leadership that is, though? Just to demonstrate to our children that we can allow ourselves to be with what we're feeling entirely. That's powerful. Even if it feels strange for them, even if you're not able to really explain it completely, they're gaining something there. They're witnessing something that's very present. And it might kind of come into conflict with the rest of their experience of the world, but that's okay.
Okay.
I mean, that's all parenting really seems to be anyway, is presence. The best we can be. We're not here to really change a path. We're not here to affect an outcome. We are here to be with. That's it. Seems to be the best we can actually do.
Yeah, I think that relates to the first guy that spoke about being a teacher, because we're so conditioned to, well, a parent or a teacher is the one who's supposed to affect, you know, be the leader and affect, do this and this and this to control how their outcome is, when it's not like that. It's like the right choice comes in the moment when you're not attached to the shoulds that you learned in school or something. Yeah.
You spend enough time with kids and you watch them just kind of engaging with whatever is naturally, they already know so much. They're so engaged. And then we have this, you know, identified tendency to want to place more layers. Hey, what are you going to be when you grow up? All these things. But really, all we need is an entire planet filled with those who are completely engaged with what is. And it works itself out perfectly.
Amen. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Does anybody else have anything they'd want to ask about or any questions? Man, these are so good. Thank you all. Looking at all these smiling faces and just feels like a big hug. Thank you for being here with me today. And if you celebrated Thanksgiving, I hope it was a wonderful time. Oh, we have another question. This is perfect. Go for it, Don.
So I just wanted to say that as great as the one-on-one is, doing this with other people and watching your responses is like, it's not one or the other, but this is great doing this.
Thanks, Don.
And so there's been some talk about kids. I'll share over Thanksgiving. My wife and I went to Boston, and we were with three of the grandkids, like, I don't know, 6, 3, and 1-year-old. And the 3-year-old, well, both the boys are kind of crazy. I mean, they run around, they're like jumping all over the place, and the parents are yelling at them, you know, sit down, you know, whatever. And not inappropriately so. I mean, they're like diving off of the couch onto tables and shit. And one of the little guys that I'd only been around a little bit, I just started doing crazy shit with him. Well, I mean, I do crazy shit with everybody, but especially with him. And I would talk Donald Duck talk, and he's like, what's that? I don't know what that is. And he would say stuff, and I would just bounce off back and forth. And we did this for a while. Then I'm sitting on the couch, and he comes over, and he gets up on the couch, and he sits next to me, and he holds my hand. And then he lays on my chest and puts his face right next to me. and he starts feeling my head, and he goes, "That's a big boo-boo." I go, "Yeah, I got a big boo-boo up there. What's that from?" I said, "Well, they took an ice cream cone, like an ice cream scoop, and they scooped part of my head out, and that's how it healed up." It's like, "Really?" I go, "Actually, yes." And he's feeling my head, and he goes, he's feeling all over. And I said, "What do you feel?" He goes, "Spikes." I said, "Yeah, some people call me Spike Head. When the hair grows a little bit there, it's Spike Head." And it was just this being with him with no fucking agenda, which for me is a real treat, because I pretty much try to be that way with adults. And you know, they're kind of open, you know, they're kind of open to it. But yeah, that's it. That's all I wanted to share.
I love it. That is what a nice tie-in for Innocence right there. Just that curiosity. So much beautiful. Does anybody else have anything they would like to share? Or should we end this? All right, then. Oh, good. May.
Hey, hi. Just I wasn't quite clear about what you're saying. For example, like when you say inquire, and so, but wouldn't that exactly be engaging one's mind? Because I mean, earlier on you were guiding the other participant, as in like you're telling her to inquire into it. Isn't that exactly like, because when we inquire into things, we are using our mind to analyze, thinking back, comparing, coming out with solutions, or making a conclusion. Or are you saying that just make the inquiry and feel into your body to stop? Or yeah, can you clarify?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. You know, initially for a lot of human beings on this path, there is a benefit to certain thought patterns being interrupted through formal inquiry. Who am I? Where am I? What is this? Those kinds of things. Yet ultimately what we find is the most fundamental form of inquiry is observation and engagement with curiosity. So I think you are kind of naturally leading that direction with your question. Sometimes it's useful to inquire with thought, and eventually we let that go. It reaches a threshold, and then we begin to observe thoughts, and then we begin to allow curiosity to basically take us into a sensational experience. It seems to be that way. So yes, for most people who are first beginning in this, if I say stop thinking, don't think at all, that's not really going to do much for them. And so this seems to come in layers. So yeah, there's going to be some formal inquiry probably, or some questions or some curiosity that shows up in the form of language. Yet ultimately it takes itself away from all thought. And so we just kind of peel these layers little by little until there's nothing left to peel. If you feel like you're already in contact with the body and there doesn't feel like there's a thought that needs to accompany these experiences, then inquiry isn't for you. Yet if you find yourself often caught up in a lot of thought, in a thought storm, or just thoughts leading to other thoughts, sometimes inquiry can be really useful to break that particular patterning. Ultimately, though, your intuition will guide you here. I mean, the truth is, no teacher or pointer is even needed at all. You already have all of this naturally built in. All of you, all of us together.
Thank you for that answer. But, and that leads me to the second question, which that is based on the word you use, intuition. I probably am someone who have never felt that I have any intuition anyway. But you see, my understanding or the way my simple mind process intuition is very much like or like sometimes it's actually conditioning. For example, like for example, we might be exposed to something which pretty often, and there might be visual or sound or audios and suggestions to it, And so let's say when you ask something, for example, like think of a color, it is strike me that it's red, but at the same time, I also know that because probably it's because in front of my screen, at your background, that is a patch of red, and that will be the most eye-catchy. So, I don't quite, I have never quite grasped the part about sensation, about intuition, not just now, but probably throughout my life, because maybe also partially because I have observed there are people who rely very heavily on intuition, and that a lot of times and they trust it so much without reasons. Sometimes it proves to be not so wise. So I have kind of concluded that maybe they a lot of times these people they actually bypass the analysis process, or maybe it doesn't fit what the analytical mind tell them, then they'll just say that it's intuition. And time and again, it seems to me it doesn't seems to work very well. At least maybe for one or two incident which I observed. So yeah, can you just elaborate a bit more about intuition, especially for maybe me, which I have never quite tapped into intuition because I really have not figured out how it works, or maybe I don't sense into it. So it's not my area of the go-to.
Yeah. It seems like the majority of human beings that use the word intuition are actually using it as a justification for thoughts. Intuition is ultimately a sensational experience. The most accurate way I can describe what that's like is it can actually feel like a physical pulling sometimes. So before I had even met Angelo, the day of, intellectually, the analysis was saying, don't go. You don't want to go to this part of town. You don't know these people. Maybe you're being set up for something, all those particular thoughts. But there was a very, very strong sensation right behind the navel, feeling like it was pulling me somewhere. And that was just so profound that I followed that, and it was essentially taking me to Angelo's house. So it's mysterious in the way that we can't really cognitively understand it, but it is something that we all have contact with. So for you, all I would recommend that could be really helpful is the more you allow yourself to feel and be engaged with body sensations, especially in the emotional center, the more likely you will come in contact with something that feels intelligent. It feels, it's difficult to describe. You won't be able to put it into a cause and effect way with the mind, but it feels like it is speaking to you, even if thoughts aren't arising around that experience. That is intuition. It feels like an effortlessness. But a lot of people, what they'll say is, oh, this was intuition. And what they're really doing is just gambling with, making impulsive choices and then justifying that by saying, oh, that was intuition. Intuition ultimately is this feeling that seems to guide this perfect experience in a sensational way. It's the best way to describe it, but it's very difficult to put our fingers on. We all know what it is for us at its most fundamental level. We just know it very well. So if you don't feel like you have much contact with that, continue to allow yourself to explore with the body sensations. Just feel it as much as possible. And you might something might really start to stand out. Follow those breadcrumbs.
Feeling to the body sensation, this is the part that I probably I get a bit confused because I think that I feel into a lot of energies and a lot, and I have kind of verified occasions that, I mean, if I term them as energy, and that I have picked up, is actually correct in the sense that I'll give you examples, right? For example, like energies of like another person who is beside me and is feeling physical pain, right? So I probably pick up on the person's energy because it feels pain in me too. Or it could be I could be picking up energies of others, which it feels the energy because it feels that vibration of another person whom I know, but probably physically not near, that is going through certain things, going through, say, certain trauma, certain therapies. I'm able to pick that up. So I considered themselves that as picking up energies. So and that is feeling within my physical body, right? So so that part of the sensory in that sense, I mean, I do think I feel very much into it. So but that has that I definitely don't but that has, I don't link it anything to intuition, because intuition is like, I do see it does work very well for some people, that when I ask them a question and intuitively they know the answer, and I know I asked her how, I asked her how she knows. She said, "Oh, it's intuition," and it's very accurate. But then again, like I mentioned, for a larger group of people, that time and again that intuition seems wrong in a sense, especially with their choices that they made. So yeah, I mean, it's a bit fuzzy here, is it not?
Yeah, I think when you're pointing toward sensation as some kind of recognition of energy, that's pretty accurate. From here, you can ask a few questions. What would it be like to be immersed in that experience of energy without thought accompanying it during that experience, and without the need to reflect upon it after? That is where you're going to start to come in contact with certain beliefs, that there's a sense of what's right, there's a sense of what's wrong, there's a sense of what's good, there's a sense of what's bad. And then you'll start to see beyond what's right and wrong, good and bad. Maybe you get a sense of what's effective or ineffective. Keep going, keep peeling those layers, because I think ultimately what you'll find is this is a relative experience that's associating itself with the belief. It's a frame of experience when it comes to reality. But what we're really pointing to here is that which is direct as possible, not for an outcome, just to be with things as they are. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to apply it to everything right away. What I'm encouraging you to do is experiment a little bit, and see what it's like to be in the moment without thought accompanying the experience. What would that be like?
It's probably still thought that I will be able to feel like, oh, there's vibrations, there's it's like feel, there's waves, so and yeah, I do try to classify them, because some feel so good, you feel so happy, others might not, but oh yeah, I do try to classify them, in the sense that I try to figure out where it came from.
Right.
So that is probably the part that's impeding the process, is it? As in, or because I try to pin, I try to point, I try to kind of like shove them in a box of like, oh, this is that, this is this, and that itself is not helpful.
Yes, that would be the mind attempting to orient to something by classifying it. Yes. Are you just thought? Are you just beliefs? Are you just what the thoughts are telling you? Or is there more? That's another inquiry that you can add. Is there more to this than just what seems to be perceived through thought? Is there more to you than what seems to be perceived through thought? And it's just engaging that kind of curiosity. And look, I don't know the answer, to be honest. I can't know the answer. Only you can directly.
Oh yeah, I was about to say use the word instinctive. I was saying, but let's say if it's pain that I feel and I know it's I'm not hurt. For example, it's like, for example, I'm not having physical pain, but suddenly there's this physical pain. For example, when I'm in a clinic, and there's this physical pain. I said, oh, why is my arm so sore? I know it's not mine. I said, oh, I was looking at the person. I suddenly understood why. So instinctively, I'll try to run away as far as I can from this person, because instinctively I want to feel the pain, right? I mean, so but I logically I will still think that kind of instinctive that kind of instinctive behavior is not intuition, in the sense that, I mean, if I touch the fire, it's painful and shoot, I would withdraw. So that is instinctive, reflective action. Whereas intuition still seems a bit like well, it's the kind of knowing which has no physical guidance to it, or is it? I don't know. Okay,
well,
I mean, my question is not very
based on what you were mentioning about feeling energies. You can basically say that intuition is energetic. It can be felt in that way.
Okay.
And there seems to be, when we have a relationship and a reconciliation with that, there seems to be an instantaneous knowing, but not associated with cause and effect or logic. Somehow a knowing there with whatever it is. And so you can ask yourself this when you were speaking of the pain. How do you even know it's pain? Get a little closer to the experience instead of looking for a reason to relate it to something else. Because it's not quite instinctive as it is reactive, our experience with pain. I think what you'll find is if you examine this really, really honestly and openly, you'll find our instinct is to be curious about whatever it is we're experiencing. That's the most instinctual. And then there's a secondary experience of react, do something about it. Find out where it's coming from. Point the finger, it's got to be this person, it's got to be this experience, so on and so forth. Come a little bit closer to the immediacy of that experience.
Okay, thanks. I'll
Yeah.
chew on it.
Yeah, and this is, honestly, May, this is just an invitation to play. Look, I don't know what the results are going to be. It's not even really about that. Just give yourself the opportunity to explore, and who knows? That's kind of the fun. We call this moment in English, we call it the present moment. Not only because it's a gift, but because when we receive a present, we don't know what's inside the box. That's part of it, part of the curiosity, the mystery, the surprise.
What a nice pun on the right.
So yeah, just give yourself permission to play. I mean, who knows? That's kind of the fun part. Who knows?
Right. Thank you.
All right. Anna, is your question somewhat short?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
What is the difference between wanting to know and curiosity? How do you differentiate?
It's a good question. So curiosity isn't about what we discover. It's not about leading to a space of knowledge. It's that initial sensation of wanting to engage with something that's interesting, not to come to a conclusion per se. That's how the mind co-opts the experience of curiosity.
So if you like use an analogy with a forest you don't know, so how do you know what is curiosity and needing to know if
Because
there's a forest?
you can feel curiosity. You can feel it. It doesn't need a thought. It's an
It doesn't need an answer.
No.
It's just wanting to see, wanting to experience.
Do you remember when you were a child? You might remember when you would just kind of had a free-form experience with playing, and there wasn't rules around what you were playing, and it didn't have any destination. You didn't know where you're going. And then maybe, I don't know, you were playing outside or something, and then your mom called you in for dinner. That's what curiosity is. It's just being so engaged with the moment that we're just taken.
So it's basically being engaged with everything that is happening.
Full engagement.
Just to see where this is taking you, without needing to know where this is taking you.
Right. That's just thought. See how thought is creating a sense of anticipation or expectation? It's unneeded. That's additional. It's just about being engaged. That's it. And I think what you find is
jump in and enjoy what is
curiosity.
Here.
Yeah. It's like a force that's the equivalent of gravity. It's dynamic, unpredictable, interesting, and not interesting for where it's leading, but interesting for being in the midst of the experience. So even boredom is loaded with curiosity. There's always something. There are times upon walking out the door and suddenly a pebble becomes the most interesting thing in experience. That's curiosity. Don't know why.
If you are standing in the front of an unknown forest and you just like, I just wanted to go and see what is there. Is that curiosity or is that is needing to know?
Well, I mean, with language, it gets tricky because it sounds like every time we engage with curiosity that it leads to something that's known or finite, but that's not necessarily the case. That's all. So yeah, I want to see what's there, but not so that I know what's there, but just to be engaged. I know it's a fine line.
Yeah, very fine line.
But here's the thing. You can feel it, keeping your finger on the pulse, so to speak, or constant engagement with the moment, being immersed with what is. It's going to be a very internal experience the majority of the time. It's not really about what we do or don't do at all. Adyashanti, and I've brought this up, but it's a great quote. He says, there is nothing out there. There's no external world. This is an inside game. The curiosity is here. It's not out here.
Could you say curiosity is like something excitement related?
It can be that way. Sometimes not. Sometimes curiosity can feel like sheer terror.
Okay.
But we're engaged with whatever it is as it arises. It's to just be with what is fully.
Okay.
And it's dynamic. Okay. It's not stagnant. It doesn't end. It doesn't like come to a place of finality. It just seems perpetual.
It doesn't create a knower, someone who is holding an answer.
I mean, if there's a mind there to co-opt the experience, there will be a knower, but that's not what curiosity is. Yeah. That's just an interpretation of curiosity.
Okay.
Once again, it leads to a sense of certainty, and certainty is curiosity dies because we no longer explore in the areas that are certain. So let curiosity be it's a driving force of innocence. It is, if you watch how nature seems to be, it really does appear like absolute curiosity, just the motion of the trees, the animals. It's just curiosity itself, innocence itself.
Childlike mind.
It's just like Don's experience, with the grandson that was rubbing his head. Even though there were answers to the questions, it didn't seem to be about the answers as much as the experience for that young boy.
Okay, got it.
Pointing something. That never leaves us. But there might be a part of us that says, I'm glad I left her behind a long time ago. Now we come to terms with reconciliation. It's a return. It's coming home.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, everyone. Wow. Powerful, wonderful stuff. Thank you all so much for joining me today. And I guess I will see you the next time. See you soon. Have a beautiful.
Thanks, Zillion.
Bye.